everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm just going to give it a few seconds here. It takes a little bit of time for everybody to trickle in. Hopefully you can see the screen up here and know that you are in the right spot. Got a CHBA webinar today with Tim Bailey. If you've been around CHBA for a while, Tim is not a stranger. You will have seen him. He's been in the housing industry for quite a while, and we've been very lucky to have him present at our conferences in the past. And he's done a few webinars too, but
A few of
today
those too.
yeah. Today we're talking about from completion to connection, building loyalty after the build. So it looks like we've got a few people online now, so we'll get started. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Just so you know, this webinar will be recorded, and the recording, as well as the slides, will be available on CHBA's website for members afterwards. And you can go to chba.ca/webinars and find that. You should also get an email afterwards with the link, probably tomorrow. It'll be available and up there for you. So hopefully you're familiar with Zoom at this point. You can adjust your screen. You can make Tim's presentation bigger or smaller as you'd like, or you can make us bigger or smaller. We do have the question and answer panel available for you today. So if you have questions as Tim's speaking, feel free to write them into the Q&A panel. And I'll wait for when he breaks to be able to ask him a question, and we'll go that way. So it'll be a pretty interactive webinar. We'll have a chance to ask questions. We also have some time at the end. So if you did want to hold your question, you're welcome to do that. And we'll prompt you again at the end to ask those questions there. So um, again, thank you all for joining. My name is Natasha. I'm a CHBA Senior Director of Operations and Communications. And again, so happy to have Tim Bailey here today, Director of Operations for Avid at ECI Software Solutions. So with that, Tim, I will pass it over to you.
Amazing. Thanks, Natasha. And thanks everyone for joining today. As Natasha mentioned, I'm Director of Operations at ECI, formerly Avid. So ECI acquired Avid Ratings. So we've been Avid's been around, for those of you who aren't familiar with Avid, we've been in North America in the home building space since 1992. So we've become kind of the leading customer experience management platform for the residential construction industry. And we work both sides of the border, Canada and the US, helping builders to benchmark and improve home buyer experience along all the stages of the customer journey, upstream to that first inquiry, all the way through to warranty service, and even beyond into like customer advocacy. My quick background too, I spent pretty much all of my life in this industry. Going way back to my teenage years, my dad was a site super. I've had the pleasure of wearing a lot of hats in this industry. So that's included everything from pouring concrete back in high school and university, framing houses, all the way through to being VP for a multi-division builder here in Ontario before I joined Avid 17 years ago. So I've had, again, the pleasure of being in this industry. I think it's sometimes the hardest industry in the world. I've been there to give the keys over to happy homeowners. I've been there as well to get the phone calls at 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning for leaking foundations. So, it's all of
So you
that
know the
stuff.
ropes.
Yeah, I've been there. I've tried this stuff. But the past 17 years, I've really been on the data and research side, helping builders use customer feedback to really try and make smarter business decisions. And that's why today's webinar, this idea of from completion to connection, building loyalty after the sale I'm pretty passionate about this. So we're going to explore this idea that completing a new home, completing a major renovation, it's a great milestone. And I don't want to trivialize it, but the homeowner journey really, to me, is just starting at that point. And this is what the data that we're going to look at today is going to show as well. So I'm going to dive into the data, but before I do, CHBA is going to launch a polling question just so we can find out a little bit more about who is in the audience today. So I'm going to let this poll run for a little bit here.
So you should see it up there. Which best describes you? Are you a custom builder, production builder, a renovator, or other? You can let us know in the Q&A of other if you'd like, but Tim's trying to get a good sense of who's on this call today.
That's
So
right.
there we go. It looks like everybody has answered. Thank you so much. We'll show those results there. It's a pretty decent split.
Nice, yeah, nice little, yeah, a diverse
Yeah,
mix out here. So hopefully we can touch on stuff that sort of strikes a chord with everybody today.
yeah, great. All right.
All right, so everyone's hopefully got a full cup of coffee and doesn't hit that post lunchtime, depending where you are in Canada, snooze mode. Because I'm going to get into some data today too on some of this stuff. So little roadmap for the webinar. Really, I broke it into kind of three main areas. First, we're going to look at some of the common pain points that really do chip away at homeowner satisfaction after they move into a new home or after they kind of get to enjoy that completed renovation. There's friction points for every builder out there, and not every builder manages it well. Second, we're going to really look at some of the data-driven insights from our Avid CX North American database. So I want to show the difference between sort of best performing, best-in-class builders. We call them the top 10% in our database, and the average builder. And some of these gaps I think you'll find too are pretty eye-opening. And then last off, I really want to dig into like the loyalty. I call it the loyalty advantage by connecting the dots between long-term customer loyalty and your bottom line, because really that's what matters. Getting referral sales, getting repeat like be-back purchasers, getting great positive online reviews. Those are the key revenue drivers that come from having a great post-closing or post-completion experience. But before I lean into the data, I again want to hear from the attendees to see what are you finding are your biggest challenges with today's customers. So I'm going to kick it back over for one more quick polling question.
Okay, so here we go. In the current market, which is quite challenging in some areas of the country, other ones are doing okay. What's your biggest challenge with customers? So we've got a few options here. So pick the one that's the biggest. Managing their expectations, anything around closing or project completion, customer service, warranty execution, or delivering value based on the price they paid for the home. So we've got about half of you have answered. If you could take a second, pick your top challenge. What is it?
We could have made this list about 100 long, probably.
Yeah, that's true. We had to narrow it down
We
at
had to
some
cut it at
point.
some point.
All right, I'm gonna give 5 more seconds here. Still have some answers trickling in. There's definitely a clear front runner.
There. I'm excited.
There we go.
Yes, yes.
So I think
What?
you should all be able to see that managing expectations, about 60% of you say that's the top challenge.
Yeah, that does definitely strike a chord.
Yeah. All right.
Today's consumers want everything.
Yeah.
And for little sometimes it feels like. So, I'm gonna kick it off with a bit of a rhetorical question here, since it's a webinar, so I can't get the immediate feedback. But this idea of where is the finish line in home building? So, is it at locking in a firm sale? Because that's really a moment our accountants say, okay, it's on the books. We can classify it as revenue now. We have a committed buyer, and control at that point starts to shift to the builder or to the renovator. Or maybe it's at each stage, after each stage, or to each department, each functional area. I think our industry is infamous for creating silos. We create a lot of divisions between departments, and a lot of times it feels like we hear from buyers where they feel like they're dealing with five, six different companies under
Mhm.
one logo. So with sales and design and construction and warranty service, sometimes even the trades interacting with the home buyer without any real seamless strategies. So sometimes I think it feels like to somebody in a department, their finish line is just getting them through that department, getting them through sales, getting them through design, whatever it might be. I think for a lot of people, they look at it like project completion of the renovation or key turnover for the new home is that magical moment. Is that truly the finish line? The homeowners now have the finished house, or they have the finished renovation to take care of, or in some cases to damage. So maybe the builder can move on at that point. But before I joined Avid, I was VP of operations for a builder about an hour west of Toronto, Ontario. And our team was so focused on the finish line being a good closing, getting that house ready for closing. And it really took a lot to start getting our head around the fact that, whoa, this goes on way beyond closing. So even with our cleanest, with our best closings, I think we all really knew the finish line was somewhere further down the field. Or maybe it's after the 30-day warranty touch point. I was talking to a pretty large builder about a month ago, and they said they were surprised how many people they have to nudge them to get the 30-day form submitted, to get the warranty service booked and some of that. So, there's sometimes maybe, we can kind of wash our hands there if the 30-day form doesn't come in.
Mhm.
Or maybe we get out to the 1 year. Is that the finish line? We've got through the journey, we got them to the 1 year service call, and at this point, we can wash our hands of it. What our data shows, and when it comes to customer advocacy, and what I've even found in my own experience, is really there isn't a finish line in our business, in home building and renovations. It might look and feel uncomfortable, but again, quick story back when I was building, I had a customer that phoned and said, "Hey Tim, can you guys send over your site labor or one of your tradespeople?" I said, "Sure. What's going on?" And he said, "Well, I need my gutters cleaned." I was like, "Wow!" I pulled his file. He'd been in the house for 3 years. But to some people, to some of these customers, there is no finish line. They have this relationship. They spent a lot of money, and it never goes away. And it made me realize that we're a really unique industry because for the most part, we're selling to short-term buyers, but we're building a product for long-term owners. And that's unusual. There's not too many industries like that.
It's pretty daunting too.
Oh my gosh, right?
It's just never done.
It's a lot of responsibility.
Hmm.
And again, I said, I don't want to trivialize move-in or project completion for a renovation. That's an important milestone. And again, one we should celebrate. It's a ribbon cutting for sure. But by the time a customer moves in their home, we've accomplished a lot. Like there are about 8 major stages that are now complete. If you think of, plans and permitting and, site preparation and foundations and framing and mechanical rough-ins and interior finishes, exterior finishes, site grading and drainage and, driveways and all that stuff. We've done a lot already by the time we finish that project or move them into that new home. It's also kind of cool. We've navigated about 60,000 potential defect opportunities.
Oh my
So there
gosh.
was a study by Dr. Jack Reville, and he's like one of those lean Six Sigma experts. And it was a study he did on a production builder. It was in Arizona, but he did a production builder's site and found that from, the first plans and permitting all the way through to 1 year after closing, a new home can have 60,000 potential defect opportunities. And that's what we're navigating every day for these customers. And we might try and finish a home that has zero deficiencies at closing or a renovation project that has two or three, incompletes or deficient items. And that's what we've dodged for the customer. Even when it comes to our finances department, a lot of finance people would say, you know what, we can pretty much turn the page on that project now. It's about 99.43% complete by the time there's a key turnover on a new house. And that's based on some US data. I can't find, we're always a little more guarded with public data in Canada. But in the US, they did a study and they found that the average builder sets aside about 0.57% of the lot and the home cost as an accrual for warranty work. So, and the average house works out to about, just shy of 3,000 US. Canadian wise would be about, 4,200 Canadian that's set aside for that after key turnover, after completion stage. So for
Hmm.
the most part, we're done. And again, even from the buyer lens, the typical buyer journey from inspiration and discovery upstream, online, digital, all the way through, they go through about 20 stages, 20 or more stages along the buyer journey. So that by the time a project's complete or a new home's complete, a lot of that's been done. We've covered a lot of that stuff. And so, from a lot of these data points, you could say we're good. We're good. We can move on. But what we're seeing with customer loyalty and customer advocacy is we're nowhere near the finish line at this point still. And that's sort of the mindset shift. And I've been banging the drum on this a little bit for the past year or so, looking at our data. But this idea that moving in doesn't mean moving on. We're not just building homes, we're not just renovating homes. We're really trying to build loyal customers. And especially in a softer market, our country's got some really soft markets, some medium markets. I don't think anyone's having a real hot market anymore. Um, but that's why customer loyalty really, really does matter even more than before. And in our customer experience world, we often hear a bunch of different terms thrown around. They talk about customer satisfaction and customer experience and emotional experience and net promoter scores. And, there's statisticians and consultants out there that just love to make this stuff incredibly complicated. Um, I like to simplify it. It really, to me, there's two distinguishing terms that often get confused: customer satisfaction and customer loyalty. And this is not just in our industry, this is across banking, auto, everything. This goes back to the JD Power days of the world. Customer satisfaction really is a point in time measurement. It's retrospective. It tells you how a customer felt, about your people, your products, your processes, all of that stuff in the rearview mirror. Where customer loyalty is really different. It's forward looking. It's about their behaviors, their attitudes, and if they're going to be supportive of your company and of your brand. And the most common way that we tend to, or anyone tends to measure customer loyalty is from the standpoint of, how likely are you to recommend ABC Builder or ABC Renovator? That's such a good indicator of their forward-looking intention. Are they going to stick their neck out and make a recommendation? Are they going to stick their neck out and make that positive review on Google for you? And a lot of the data that I'm going to be talking about today revolves around customer loyalty and that type of metric. But I think even ultimately what every builder, what every renovator should be really striving for is a progression from, customer engagement. You've got a customer, they're engaged. Take it to the next level where they're loyal. Let's try and get them to that next level where they're actually advocates for your brand. And that's where they're out there. They're going to be bragging about you at dinner parties. They're going to be spreading the word to friends and family, posting positive reviews on Google and Yelp to try and defend your brand. Top performing companies these days have both word of mouth, like referrals, and word of mouth with reviews. And now the business case is loyal customers are going to drive sales. They're going to drive down your marketing costs. And the experience you deliver to these folks is more powerful and more valuable these days than any dollar you can spend on marketing. That's just become kind of the new reality. Steve Jobs said it years ago. If your customer buys from you once, you made a sale. If they come back again, you've built trust. But if they start telling others, now you've built a brand. And I think, if you think about your homeowners, and they're typically making one of the most largest emotional and financial decisions in their lives when they decide to build that new home or take on a major renovation project, the quality of their experience after completion, that's going to determine whether they become advocates for your brand or whether they become critics. And whether they refer friends and family to you, whether they post amazing online reviews about you, or whether they do the opposite, hopefully not, and take to Reddit and take to Yelp and take to Google and all those other spots. And the homes you build or renovate are they're super important. And again, not trivializing the product, but I think it's the trust that you're going to be earning. That's what's going to define your businesses for the future.
So given that, home building does have its, ebbs and flows, and right now we are in that softer market, really soft in some areas of the country, does this strategy shift at all with that? Does it stay pretty consistent? Does satisfaction matter more than loyalty or vice versa in a soft market?
I think yeah, actually it's a great question because I think I'm dating myself now, but if you look back to like '08, '09, and more so in the we Canada came out a little less scathed than the US market, but we had clients back then that were doing 100% of their sales by referrals. They weren't getting any marketed prospects in the doors at all. So every sale they got was because somebody already gave them sort of social proof they recommended them. And
Right.
so that's why, customer satisfaction is just the baseline to play in a softer market. And we have to take it to that next level of like, okay, we're nurturing these folks to get them up to be loyal and then top level to advocacy.
Yeah, when they do their marketing for you.
100% saves
Yeah.
your marketing spend, which is important in a soft market too.
Mhm.
So again, these days I keep banging the drum on advocacy, but it is taking it to that ultimate level. And I think breaking things down a bit, the typical customer journey in home building, this is from our data. I've just tried to make it like a little cleaner, but it's still busy slide. It is really a roller coaster. This is kind of mapping how a customer feels along their journey from, again, original inspiration discovery all the way through to a year after they've lived in the product. And I had this on a slide up at a presentation I did in the US, and they said, looks like a fly in a box. Put a fly in a box and they're just trapped in there and zigzagging all over the place. But that's often how it feels to a customer. It's that roller coaster of like, yeah, I'm super stoked. Oh my gosh, this is the worst decision I've ever made. But we typically find, and every year we do our annual State of Customer Experience and Residential Construction report. And in our 2025 State of CX report, what we found is that everything kind of flatlines after completion after closing.
Yeah, no kidding.
It really drops off. And what we're seeing in the would recommend question, that would you recommend your builder, it drops off by 16 points from the time of purchase to the 1 year after occupancy or after completion. Like it's a massive drop. Even beyond that, 26% of homeowners drop off as saying they would recommend between point of sale and a year after completion. And so those are some big, somehow along
That's
the
huge.
journey, yeah, like we're losing a quarter of our customers, like from as being referring advocates. And why any of that matters is because we always talk about the marketing funnel at work, and it's really been transplaced now by this marketing flywheel. And that linear approach we used to have to this funnel, you throw marketing dollars at the top till you get a prospect that sticks. You advance them through the funnel, and out the bottom comes a customer. That's getting pretty antiquated versus how most companies are thinking now of more of it being a flywheel or a cycle, with the sale, with the customer being now at the center of all of this stuff. So with the new way of thinking, this flywheel, it really integrates marketing, sales, and service into this one cohesive repeating cycle. So it's based on customer satisfaction and loyalty driving this wheel that I've got on the slide here. It takes marketing still, we still have to provide valuable content to engage people today. But then it takes sales. We have to interact, we have to problem solve, we have to build trust. And then it takes service to close the loop. Like we have to be servicing these folks, outstanding post-sale support to make sure they're happy, successful. And then again, they'll feed back into the engine. Highly satisfied customers, they're your advocates and referrers that they just feed right back into that attract stage that I've got on the cycle there. And ultimately, what's cool is this does reduce the need for some of the heavier lift of attracting just marketed prospects, because this digital flywheel, you take your happy customers, put them back in, and it's a much more cost-effective engine than any amount of paid advertising. And I guess, when you think about the value of a company, the enterprise value of a business, what's the ROI? What would you value a business at that's able to take their people, their product, their processes, their platforms, get it all firing on, all cylinders, and every time create a loyal fan 100% of the time?
Yeah.
It's such a rare brand these days. There's some out there that do a good job at it, but how would that impact your revenue for one, and also the decrease your need for some of the marketing spend?
We did have someone ask, just as a reminder, the slides are available. So they're saying this aiming for advocacy like chart here looks really valuable. And I can see all these checkpoints that you should make sure that you're touching base with people on. So just a reminder to everybody, the slides are going to be made available afterwards at chba.ca/webinars.
For sure, for sure, and happy to share any data beyond this too. Then, because it's that's hard to see sometimes on a slide. That one, I tried to make it tidy, but it get pretty wide.
It's a long journey.
Oh, it's a long journey for sure. And the other thing that with today's consumers I think is interesting as well is they really have become ad blind. I think all of us, I go in to see my weather forecast on my app on my phone, and an ad pops up and it ticks me off. And we're becoming more and more ad blind. But what consumers still trust is what they deem to be the opinions of normal people. So referrals are still one of the most trust-rich forms of advertising. It's like 92% of folks will trust word of mouth referrals from
Yeah.
friends and family. And then also there's like earned media versus owned media. Earned media is like word of mouth, peer-to-peer formats, things like that. That actually drives about 4 times more brand lift than paid media now. So there's like almost over 3/4 of people say they more likely to trust content from normal people that's shared. So user-generated content, it's like a 30% higher engagement rate, twice as likely to be shared. There's just stats galore we can get into on this stuff, but distilling it all down, it really means, referrals, reviews, user-generated content, influencer marketing, advocacy marketing. Those are the trustworthy things that we're trying to shoot for here. And at the end of the day, these are what help great brands grow, organically through product and people and an easy process. Think about it with your own communities. I was thinking this today. I played hockey this morning before work. You know, just the chatter at an arena. That type of thing. The what's the power of these people talking? What's the algorithm? The algorithm, the exponential power of these people talking in person or posting something on Facebook. That's what really does fuel this flywheel today of building trust and keeping, this momentum going without just again blowing our brains out on marketing spend.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's an investment in this rather than, it's one of your marketing tools.
It's 100%, yeah, yeah. And as again in a challenging or a softer market, customers have their guards up really high right now, or prospects do, and I think this is more valuable than ever. In a busy market, everyone's focusing on production. In a slow market, everyone's like cherishing the customer.
Yeah.
So I want to dig into some of our CX data now. And again, this is a large database we sit on, and it's not to be boastful. It just, from from a stats standpoint, the deeper the data, the more you can really trust the trends and the insights we're seeing from the data. And just to give you an example, like when we do our annual State of Customer Experience report, the next one's going to be out in the next couple weeks here. But in our 2025 report, the data was made up of over 600 builders across North America. We had over 570,000 home buyer surveys, and it was like something like just shy of 9 million data points that can be crunched and tabulated. So it makes me think I can trust our data.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, the validity is there. It should be statistically backed up here in what we're seeing for some of this stuff. So what I mentioned earlier, a very common loyalty indicator is this survey question: would you recommend, right? Would you recommend your builder? Would you recommend your renovator? And what we're looking at here, and there's going to be a few graphs in a row coming up in these next few slides. What I'm plotting here is, again, best in class, top 10% in North America is the orange line, and the blue line below that is what I call the pack, the average builder. And I'm plotting it at move-in. This is from our builder database, but then again, with renovation data, it would be mirroring quite similar. If you look at move-in versus year-end, that's what I'm plotting there.
Hmm.
So this first graph is plotting the would recommend score. And what we're seeing is the average builder, the blue line, drops 14 points from move-in to year-end. The orange line, the top 10%, drop only 7 points. So the average builder is declining at twice the rate of top performers. And again, there's a double advantage on this slide here. One is the top performers, they position themselves higher at key turnover at completion, but then also they decline less. So they get that sort of the double whammy effect there. And this is the kind of gap that they create in the market that helps them drive more referral sales. Again, more positive online reviews is ultimately more revenue. So the question I wanted to dig into, and with the data here, is what do they do differently? And so at the start here, I'm going to get into some other high level key performance indicators. And the first one is caring. And I know I pulled this up before and people are like, whatever. Yeah. Sounds
I don't
squishy.
care about the caring.
I don't care about the caring. It sounds soft and squishy. But our correlation analysis has shown that the survey question that we have builders level of caring, like to what degree did your builder or renovator care about providing a quality product and a positive experience is the actual kind of wording of the question. That always ties out. It always correlates to the would recommend score. So it's a perfect surrogate for customer satisfaction. And, I think we can never underestimate the value of caring. When customers feel genuinely cared about, they become advocates. And when we look at, again, the orange line versus the blue line on screen here, the North American all kind of the pack drop almost 15 points from key turnover to a year later. And the best in class only dropped 5.6. So there's a difference of over 9 points between best in class. And caring itself, it's not about grand gestures. It's the little things. It's returning the phone call quickly. It's following up on warranty requests without being asked. It's just sending little check-in messages to see how things are going. Those are the moments that make a customer think, hey, my renovator, my builder, they care about me. They haven't forgotten about me. And in today's market, I think caring is probably one of the most underrated competitive advantages you could have for a company, and it costs almost nothing. That's what I love about it. I like our things that don't cost a lot. Caring doesn't cost that much. It's really it's a simple thing to execute. It's really a cultural thing within a company.
Yeah.
Another key performance indicator is this idea of confidence in the builder. We know that customers need to feel confident in their builder or their renovator to become an advocate. If they're second guessing their decision, you can imagine they're probably not going to put their own name out on the line to refer or post a good review. You think about your own scenario. Unless you've had an outstanding experience, would you ever go to Google and post a review? Like
Unless it's really negative, probably not.
negative, for sure you do.
Like,
Positive, you've got to yeah. And so they've got to feel confident that the renovator, their builder did a great job before they're going to stick their neck out there. And what we're seeing again on this slide is the data is telling a similar story. North American all, the average builder is dropping off almost 15 points from key turnover to a year later, and the top 10% drop off about 5.5. So we're seeing that mirroring every one of these KPIs, these key performance indicators, coming up very similar. So we're seeing a difference of, again, best in class are spreading the gap at year end by about 9 points. And then there's overall responsiveness, and similar story. The steep fall, more than 14 points by the pack, by the average builders, from key turnover to a year later. And that's not when you start in stats and in data. I always tell builders, if you're within 1 or 2 points of something, you're in the strike zone, you're fine. Once you start getting into like 5 to 7 to 8 points, but once you go over into double digits differences, that's like a shift. That's not just a little bit of a nuance. That's shifting how homeowners feel about are they being supported after they, take possession of that renovation or take possession of that new home. And the top 10%, again, they're running about 9% better, 9% better. And this is on responsiveness. And responsiveness is hands down to me another indication of caring though.
Yeah.
You know, if homeowners can forgive defects, if we set the expectations right, they can they'll forgive defects and they'll forgive some minor tolerance issues, like that too. But what they don't forgive is silence. Every day without some sort of an update, they just feel like they've been forgotten.
So
And
Tim, we polled, sorry to interrupt, but
no,
we
no,
so
no,
we
no.
we polled people at the beginning and they said managing expectations was sort of that, you know, that key pain point, if you will.
Yeah.
Do you have any sense of whether or not that responsiveness is different during the construction phase versus after the expectation of responsiveness? Like, do people expect you to be just as responsive 9 months after the build as they do, 3 weeks before closing, or is there any leeway there?
No, it's equal, if not more intensified too. Because one of the slides I'll touch on too is this idea. It really is about like it's like a relationship issue. And so I'll get into that. But yeah, you've set the bar for responsiveness by what you've asked of them through the first part of the journey. Like we've actually created the bar. We've created that expectation of like, hey, you've got to come and pick this out. You got to pick your plumbing. You got to pick your tile. You got to pick this. You got to meet me here. You got to meet me there. And then if we ghost them after. I mean, now it's just this whole perception of you got my money and now we're not talking. So
Right.
I think it's yeah, we set the bar and now we're going to drop off, and that's what's creating a lot of this dissatisfaction. And again, responsiveness to me, it's one of the fastest, cheapest, most impactful levers you can pull, and especially when budgets are tight and the market's odd. You don't need a bigger budget generally to be responsive. You just need, more attentive thought
Yeah.
mindset about this stuff. Because what separates, again, what I see was I travel all over North America. I have for 17 years talking to every type of builder, renovators, all sorts of industry people. And what separates the best builders is not perfection. For a lot of times it's stuff like presence. They're just present. They're there. And that's the consistency stuff that helps maintain trust long after completion, long after closing. And then there's another squishy one, quality of experience. It's a little bit, it's this one is again the people part of our business, the people part of the customer journey. It's measuring how homeowners feel about things like their service experience, how they were treated during sales, during picking out their options, during construction, and that comes down to like, are we accurate? Are we friendly? Are we knowledgeable? Are we professional? Those types of skills. So it really is, it's the soft skills in a hard industry. And this is, again, it's our industry is not always tooled for soft skills, but we have to go into this spot. The average builder drops about 14 points, again, from key turnover to completion a year later. And best in class are dropping about 5.9. So again, they're carving out this 8 point gap. And this doesn't happen by accident. The builders who maintain the high scores, they're actively investing in their warranty and their customer care teams, not just in their sales and their marketing efforts. I guess they recognize the person that is making that warranty call 8 months after project completion, 8 months after closing, is just as important as the sales consultant to close the deal. And again, it's a little bit of a sea change mindset that they have.
Yeah. And this obviously, also applicable to renovators, right? Like
Oh,
you're using examples of new home sales, but it could be for any type of project, big or small. You've got that construction phase in the end, and they still expect you to be there to deal with any issues that might pop up.
Oh, they totally do. I was sitting to Natasha when we were planning this. I said, I've been ghosted by a renovator and a builder in the past 4 years. We built an ADU and then we did a big kitchen reno in the main house, and both of them ghosted me after. And I don't think I'm that bad a guy. No.
And that's not a small renovation either. Yeah.
No, no. And
Yeah.
yeah, both were significant projects. And I've seen this data materialize in both sides of the industry personally, which was pretty interesting to watch. Like, oh my gosh, this is symptomatic of stuff we have to solve as an industry.
Yeah. We just had somebody mention helpfully, it was more of a comment than a question, but just food for thought. So they just bought a new home themselves, and the builder let them know at each stage how long it would be before they would contact them again
I
and
love it.
why. So they had that expectation. And so if there was a bit of a gap on why there was no communication, they already were aware that that was going to happen and why.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so important. It really is about engineering expectations, a lot of this stuff too, right?
Yeah.
The next KPI I put on screen here is quality of home, and I got booed a little bit when I presented this idea that quality is no longer a wow factor. And because I know a lot of us, we pound the drum our industry, we got it on websites, number one in home quality, this and that. Home quality these days is table stakes to play. A home builder, a renovator, you're not going to generally get bonus points for delivering quality anymore. What you will get is you'll take a hit if we fall short, though. And so when we look at the quality of the home scores, similar pattern. The North American average drops off about 11 points, and the top 10%, the best in class builders, drop off about 5 points. So, it's a difference of about 6 points here between best in class and the average. And again, similar to every slide here, best in class start higher, decline less. And but they are still declining because again, the new car smell went away. The new home smell, the new renovation smell has gone away by a year later. And also, no home is perfect. Home is not a static product, so it's complex, it's handcrafted, it's natural materials, manufactured materials. It's expanding and contracting and shrinking and doing settling, all that stuff. And in Canada, it's got to go from a minus 30 to a plus 30, minus 30 January, maybe minus 40 January this year, depending on where you are, and to a plus 30 humid day in southwestern Ontario, possibly where I live. And that puts stress on materials. And after 30 years plus, wow, that's a long time in this industry for
Don't
a
think too
20,
hard about it.
for a 35-year-old guy. Um, I built a lot of homes. I built hundreds of homes in my career, and I built my last home myself. And I've never seen a perfect home, and I don't ever expect to see a perfect home. And if a customer is expecting a perfect home, we've somehow misaligned expectations. Perfection's not the goal, and if your customers ever think it is, we've got to get that horse back in the barn somehow. Great customer service is what's really critical. It takes the one-two punch. You need to have, again, quality is table stakes, and then you have to wrap it up in a great service experience. But great customer service alone is not going to make up for an inadequate quality when it comes to the construction. And that's just that lipstick on a pig theory. I like to think of quality and service working together. Like back to my younger days of pouring concrete in high school and stuff like that. Quality to me is the concrete part, and service can be the rebar. It takes both of them. If you want to build a strong homeowner perception, to make them stay loyal long before you hand over the keys or turn over a renovation, you need to have quality and service working in harmony together. And then we also have overall value. And this one's a challenging one in the market, in a lot of markets across the country these days, as this perception of value. And I think, this is one where we really need to lean into and understand, both the renovation and the new home space. There's affordability challenges, and what the data shows here is the same trend we've seen on every one of the slides here is the average builder drops about 12 points, top drop about 6 points. It's a little less of a margin on this one, but there's still, best in class are still setting about a 5.5 point gap by the time it's a year after completion. And this is about like value to me is everything the homeowner experiences, during that process, during the first year after completion, how the renovation or the home performs, how issues are handled, how responsive their builder is. When you think through the classic value, there's a value equation. I put it on screen there, and you've probably seen it before, but it's value equals benefit over price. And by the time you get like a year after completion, you can't change the price. So we can't play with the denominator anymore. So the only string we can play on is that the benefit, the numerator, if we want to increase value.
Yeah.
And so we have to be constantly trying to drive benefit after we turn over that renovation, after we turn over that new home. And what we're seeing is, again, best in class decline too, but they're keeping that gap somehow. And what's interesting to me here, and I'll bang the drum on this a few times for the next bit, is this idea of communication. Communication has such a huge impact on perceived value. When communication drops off, when problems linger, when responsiveness starts to slip, homeowners start to question whether their investment was worth it. And, the top 10%, again, they don't deliver perfection. They deliver consistency. And most customers, that's what we want as consumers. I just want consistency. I just want to know the journey I'm on here. And they stay engaged and they follow up and they resolve issues quickly. And that translates into perceived value. When at the end of the day, that's going to be, when a homeowner has a perception of value, I truly believe that, move-in sets an expectation, but by the time they're in their renovation for a year, in their new home for a year, they're doing a lot of analysis psychologically as, is this worth it? Was this worth it to me? So that's just some high-level KPI data. I just summed it up in this one slide, but really what it shows is across every key indicator in customer satisfaction, customer experience, would recommend, caring, confidence, all these key performance indicators. Average builders are losing about 11 to 15 points between that sort of move-in or key turnover and a year later. And the top 10% of builders lose about half that. And that's a massive, in research data, that's a massive difference. So again, what the data is showing us is these gaps between the average builders and the top builders, they're not maybe huge at move-in, but they keep widening as we get out to that 1 year stage later. And the past few slides have been pretty high level. I wanted to dig in a little deeper here since again, home building and renovating is, it's a complicated sport. And again, think about it, more than 8 major stages that we've completed with that home, from again, plans and permitting through to key turnover. About 20 plus stages of the customer journey have been completed. We've dodged 60,000 potential defect opportunities. Like that's some pretty cool stuff we do as an industry. So looking at the data, I want to maybe just turn it over to CHBA for a polling question here to find out what you think are some of the biggest challenges.
All right, so we asked you what your biggest challenges are. What do you think your customers feel are the biggest challenges? So this one, you can answer more than one if you really think they're relevant. We've got home readiness and completion. Is that at the top of their list of what the biggest challenge is? Is it resolving construction issues in a timely manner, communication, warranty execution, or your level of caring, whether or not you're a builder, renovator, developer? What do you think your customers feel are the biggest challenges in working with you?
We know that aligning their expectations is the biggest challenge you have with them, but what do they think back?
Yeah. Where are you marking yourself kind of low on the scorecard?
Totally.
We won't judge. It's an
That's
anonymous
right. This is not about
poll.
Jim. That's right. This is a
No.
safe space. It's a safe space we have today.
Yeah, so we've got just over half of people have answered so far, so I'll give it another couple seconds. But where do you think your customers think is the pain point with you? That should probably be your
Yep.
biggest focus on action point. But anyway, we'll wrap this poll up here and we'll share those results. So it's kind of a tight race.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, that responsiveness, right? Resolving construction
Yes.
issues in a timely manner. Then
Yep.
communication, pretty high
Communication.
up there. Yeah.
That's awesome. The next few
Okay.
slides touch on almost all that, though.
Okay.
Amazing. Thanks for the poll. All right. So, setting the stage for success. I read a book by, it was called The Experience Economy. I think it was Joseph Pine. But he said, work is theater, every business is a stage. And I always loved that idea. And so, this for our industry especially, I believe best in class builders are setting the stage for success. And so, time and time again in our data, we see that home readiness is a key driver for customer satisfaction. So, I wanted to lean into that area and dig in a bit deeper. What our data shows is that the pre-closing walkthrough, that orientation we do with the customer, that's where it really does set the stage. And the top 10% are creating that early advantage or taking pole position. Some of the survey data that I pulled up here, if you look at some of the questions, again, this is before they get the keys. Home was clean and ready. The best in class are about 5 points higher. Perception of items that need correction, they're about 5 points higher. For the number of items they actually get corrected before completion, they're scoring about 10 points higher. And then for the time, that timeliness thing leaks in here again. They're nearly 8 points higher for that time to get things wrapped up. So what this data is telling me is that, something I've always believed is best builders spend more of their time firefighting or fire preventing than firefighting. And I was talking to a big builder years ago in Toronto. And that's what they said. He said, we focus on fire prevention. There's way more ROI on fire prevention, on being proactive than being reactive. The build them up, kind of fix them up model. That's often been a pattern in our industry, just doesn't cut it today. So at the end of the day, being proactive, being reactive, there's a crucial distinction that we've seen in our data too between clean and ready versus corrected and ready. And it sounds like such a little nuance, but a really beautifully staged home, since we're such a, we're a very Photoshop industry, a beautifully staged home with outstanding deficiencies still feels unfinished to a buyer. So customers care more about completion than they do about presentation. So, again, a sparkling clean home with a list of unresolved items stresses them out. It damages trust. They start to say, it creates a signal like, you care more about appearances than you do about getting it right. And so, again, top builders I've seen, they don't just present a clean home, they present a complete home. And I think that's a big difference. It makes that critical first impression, builds customer confidence, and it really does set the tone for where we're going to go next in a year later. This is some data from, what I call, earning your curtain call in customer loyalty. But if pre-closing walkthrough is setting the stage, this is where we want the standing ovation. This is where we want the applause, because these days applause, again, they come in the form of referrals. They come in the form of great reviews online. They come in, social mentions, brand advocacy, all that good stuff we want. But the data we're seeing here is some massive gaps between, again, best in class and the average. Across the board, we're seeing like 12 to 16 point gaps across all of these warranty metrics. And these are some of the largest gaps we see in our data in general. Top 10% run almost 15 points higher when it comes to providing a positive overall warranty experience, like 15 points higher for beginning. That was in the poll question. We saw some of that too, like timeliness of getting warranty stuff resolved. Well, look at the gap. Best in class have it dialed in much better than the average. Getting in and beginning work, getting in, finishing up the warranty work and dealing with quality warranty repairs as well is a 15-point gap. Providing quality warranty service, a 14-point gap. Providing updates, that's a communication piece that we saw in the polling question. There's like a 12-point gap. And, that's a big difference. These aren't just little nuances of data changes. And I get it. The post-closing stage is challenging. That once you've turned over a renovation, turned over a new home, you don't have easy access to go in and fix things. Homeowners, again, have, varying, it's, they could call it ethics of care, for lack of that's the nice way of saying some people just don't take care of stuff. But,
Hmm.
the ethics of care are different. So it kind of blurs the line between what's warranty, what's just lack of maintenance with a home. And also there's also a psychology that creeps in by the time someone's a year past a renovation or a year past closing a new home, where they're no longer in that emotional state anymore. The excitement's gone away. It's now a payment. And so they get much more rational and they start to really evaluate, was this decision worth it? Every time I pay my monthly bill for whatever it is, a mortgage payment or my line, my HELOC payment for my reno, I'm much less emotional, much more rational. And, I think it's the curtain call isn't just at move-in now. You can see it just leaks right through. Homeowners are going to reflect about everything beyond, throughout that first year of ownership as well of the new home or that first year post-completion of the renovation. And what I've seen time and time again, and our industry is built this way, and we got to shake it up somehow. Um, the top performers in the industry, they treat warranty as a marketing opportunity. And they use it as a chance to reinforce trust, to demonstrate caring. They look at it as the biggest opportunity to turn these homeowners now into advocates. The average builders in our industry, they look at it as something to minimize. They look at it like a cost center, a necessary evil. You know, in my case, with both the ADU we built and the kitchen renovation, they look at it as an afterthought. I have
Hmm.
to reach out. It's like, hey, that customer that you did this stuff for, we're ready. We're ready for some, warranty service
Yeah.
now. But the flip side is if you respond quickly, if you complete work timely, if you deliver quality repairs, and you communicate throughout the process. You're not just, fixing problems at that point, you're really building loyalty, and that truly is the secret sauce. So I wanted to quick without getting too deep into stats, we did a correlation analysis of our data at the year after completion. And just to see what, correlation is not causation, but it does give some cool indicators of like, if this factor moves up, does this factor move up? So we did a correlation against the overall rating of a builder score. And if a correlation factor is above a zero point 0.9, it's considered a very positive, very high positive. If it's zero point 0.7 to zero point 0.9, it's considered a high positive. So it's the important stuff, really, at the end of the day. And the top five factors that the correlation software spit out was what we put up on the screen here. Number one, confidence in the builder. Again, when homeowners feel confident in their builder, their satisfaction remains strong. The second one was quality of the experience. Again, that soft skills stuff came up as well as like number two. And number three was caring. Again, another soft one. But caring, again, showing genuine care for these homeowners after closing, it has a direct statistical relationship to how they're going to feel about you. And then number four is overall value again. And we talked about that, this ongoing idea of like providing benefit for the price paid. And then number five is quality of home. And I mentioned quality never to be ignored, but it is table stakes to play now. So
Tim,
if
how many factors like did you ask about? We've got the top five here, but
at year end, this data would be based on about 90 survey questions. So
holy
it's
smokes.
five of 90.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So it's some pretty cool when it correlates down to, and I've seen this same type of theme coming out for the past several years when we run this analysis.
yeah, that's crazy.
So so at the end of the day, if any of these are going up, so is their perception, their overall rating of their builder. If any of these are going down, conversely, that's also heading south. So I did a little ROI. I won't spend a lot of time on this slide, but I did a little ROI calculator just to show what a 7-point loyalty gap could turn into. So for best in class builders, um, just some stuff, some data that I've been putting together. First off, the new home sale prices across Canada vary dramatically. So I put a sticker tag on this house of $750,000. You can scale that up or scale that down depending on your market area. But then just looking at some of the other data, average builders, they might get 25 to 35% of their sales from referrals. Best in class, 40 to 55% of their sales from referrals, maybe even higher. But for this example, I kind of said, okay, when average builder gets 30% of their sales from referral, best in class builder gets 45% from referral. That's about a 15 extra referrals for a 100 closing a year builder. If you're doing about 100 projects or 100 closings a year, you're going to maybe generate 15 extra referrals. If you're looking at some of the margins in the home building industry, again, US data is splashed all over every internet site. We keep ours much more guarded in Canada. We're probably 15 to 25% gross margin. So I went in the middle of that. Net margin's kind of 5 to 10%. So I took a 7% for that. But anyways, when you run through the scenario, if you take those 15 additional sales of 750,000 bucks for the home, and that's going to create about 11.25 million in extra revenue for that builder for those referred sales. And if you take a 20% gross margin, that's 2.25 million in extra gross profit. At a 7% net margin, that translates into almost 800,000 in an additional net profit. So, it does make a difference, especially again in a softer or more balanced market conditions. The other thing that's cool though about referrals is they're about 4 times to 5 times more likely to close. So if you have a lead that's generated from search engines or all that, you still have to get social proof built up. You still have to sell them. If they come in from a family or a friend, you've got social proof intact already. Again, 92% of consumers trust recommendations from friends and family. So, a referral to me, it's not just a lead, it's almost often a pre-sold customer. Conversely, though, what we're seeing is the data showing that after, we drop about 10 to 15 points in the referral intentions after occupancy, after closing, after completion. So, while buyers are ecstatic at closing, average builder seems to lose touch with them as the journey goes on to the 1 year point.
Yeah. We have about 5 minutes or so left, and Tim's got a few more slides here. So if you do have questions for him, please pop them into the Q&A now. So you'll have a couple of minutes to type while Tim's wrapping
No.
up here.
And I do. I only have a couple. I just want to start tying a couple of loose ends together. And these are just really the summary slides of it. Building loyalty after the build. What's the data story we're seeing? I mentioned it already, but always remember clean and ready is not the same as corrected and ready. We need to focus on completion because that's what customers want, not just presentation. Customer satisfaction, again, we're seeing it declines after move-in for all builders, best in class as well as the average builder, but top performers drop off less. So they set the stage for the early advantage and they decline less. And again, the other thing we saw in all of this data is the gaps widen after closing. They're noticeable at move-in, but they get kind of like crazy. Talking like 15, 16 point gaps by the time we get a year out there. And I put on the right side there, but we have to deliver more than just homes. It's delivering on our promises to these customers is more than just delivering the home or delivering their completed renovation. What we're seeing is bringing satisfaction down. A big one is post, our warranty execution. That's the biggest weakness we're seeing in the data. And that comes down to some of those things they point out, like timeliness to get started, timeliness to finish, quality of repairs. But the big one, communication. Communication is by far, it's the most consistent failure point. Providing updates on warranty requests. That's a recurring low scoring question that we see. Homeowners feel uncertain when they're not attended to. And, I mentioned the relationship idea. It's much like a relationship. We start off intense at the beginning. We give them all our energy to get them to sign on the dotted line. We keep them in this intense relationship. It's a lot of fun. We're picking out colors. We're doing all this stuff. And then you give them the keys. You turn over the renovation and they realize that their builder is seeing other people because we start ghosting them. And it's much like a relationship. All of a sudden they start to say, hey, wait, like, weren't we exclusive? So, it's that psychological journey that they're on. And then also we have expectation mismatches that creep in. By the time they've lived into the home or in the renovation for a year, they start to, if we haven't educated them on product tolerances and quality tolerances, we missed our mark. You can't go in a year after and say, no, that 5 millimeter gap in your concrete floor is allowed. If they didn't know that before, they're not going to like hearing it now.
It'll sound like an excuse.
100%, yes, yeah. Our caulking separates along a stair stringer on a cold wall. All the stuff we need to be, again, inoculating them for earlier. And a lot of these folks too, they just don't have the operational wherewithal to maintain a new home or a new renovation. And so at the end of the day, I mentioned before, but buyer's remorse might start to creep in because excitement fades, the sunshine pump goes away. Now it's just a rational thought process of I've been in the house now for a year, I've been with my reno for a year. My kitchen reno is about a year right now. It's just, it's a line of credit payment now.
Hmm.
So building loyalty after the build, what are some of the best doing in the industry? Um, they're really focusing on the fact that closing the completion it's just another milestone along the journey. It's nowhere near the finish line. We're just entering into overtime at this point with trying to win the game. I mentioned before too, though, but they're really treating the warranty stage as a marketing relationship, not a defect department, not a repair shop. So they're using it as an opportunity to communicate early, communicate often, communicate when there's no update that's even needed. I've said to lots of clients, you have a great construction schedule, you have a wicked marketing plan for campaigns. What you do with a customer after they take possession of their renovation or their new home's got to be nurtured the same way. The same way we nurture a prospect to a firm deal, the same way that we build a house with construction schedules, that's got to be similar. And then at the end of the day, a lot of the best in class are building, I call it tech and touch, leveraging digital tools, smart tools with expert human touch still. So again, we've got clients doing proactive wellness inspections where they're going in at like 4 months after and 10 months after and just making sure things are operating, the customer's happy. They're publishing warranty service level agreements where they're, kind of a customer promise of what they're going to do. Definitely anticipatory communication, even if there's no update. If a customer's not hearing from you, but you're working on it behind the scenes, they still don't hear from you. That makes a difference. Some of the cool things are creating, again, lifestyle integration, like referral networking, community events, customer appreciation events, prompts right after a great warranty call. So you can hit them up for a referral or hit them up for a positive online review. And then everybody now has some sort of a digital self-service hub as well. And there's so many out there.
Does it matter who's doing those things, Tim? Like, does the client or the customer care if it's the owner of the company or just anyone, as long as somebody's addressing those issues?
Yeah, just anyone. They just want to be heard from. As long as the person can actually help with the issues. But yeah, and it scales with the size of the business too. Like some people have this all automated through HubSpot, whatever it may be, like through CRM software and all that. And others are using like literally spreadsheets and a admin person. So I'll wrap with that. Again, I just want to leave off with the fact that we don't want to let moving in become moving on. I think, the best builders are delivering homes, but the very best deliver this peace of mind. Like we're trying to make it deliver a quality product in an easy experience. If we want to, again, keep these customers loyal after the build. So I went a minute over, I think, but I did put a QR code here. There's a ton of resources, case studies, research studies on at that QR code there. They're all free. So, and my contact information's up there as well. And we can stay after class here for a question and answer.
Yeah, well, we do have several questions in, so if you do have a couple extra minutes, audience, you're welcome to stay on. We'll stay with Tim and get through a few of those questions. For those of you who do have to drop off, we will record right through to the end, so you can catch the recording later. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you, Tim, for joining us. And with that, I'll jump into some of the questions. So you've got some resources linked here. Somebody has asked, where can we find copies of the customer satisfaction surveys that you're referencing through this presentation?
Oh, we have them. You can reach out to me directly. I mean, they're proprietary survey templates, but I can definitely share kind of the structure and content that's in them. We don't send the surveys all out because they are
Okay.
proprietary, but
Good to know. And so this info was a lot of it was in here, the core stuff that you need to know, those top five things
for sure.
anyway. Yeah. Somebody asked with a lot of builders and contractors diversifying right now, given the challenging market, how does Avid services align across varied portfolios? So, for example, they give new homes versus condos, rental property management. Like, can you help with those things?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's, I guess, because we've been around since 1992. We actually have CX survey templates for multifamily builders, for single family production builders. We have for renovators and remodelers as well, and for trades. And yeah, we've been around long enough in specific to this industry that we have all that stuff created. So no, it's kind of turnkey for any part of the industry to engage with without getting all pitchy, but we do that.
Great. Yeah, they do.
We do that.
Somebody said, so you were mentioning about homeowners leaving reviews, hopefully positive reviews, and how important that is. They said, can you repeat what platform you're using? But I actually don't think we talked about what platform. But do you know from your clients, like, is there any one platform that's more popular than other? Does it matter? Or is it just the fact you've got those reviews in there?
Google's the big one. That's the hardest one, unfortunately, to crack too, because so not again to get pitchy, we can capture reviews, we can push them out on a public review page. We'll optimize so that if somebody Googles ABC Builder, they'll see reviews from Avid on ABC Builder coming up as a top search, often in the Google Business Panel as well. But to actually get Google reviews, we have to use some tools to encourage people to leave a Google review.
Mhm.
But that seems to be one of the things. But again, that whole review space is getting shaken up pretty dramatically with AI as well. Because now, you do a Google search on somebody and put the word reviews after a restaurant, a hotel, a builder, a renovator, and Gemini is going to come up with and kind of give you a synopsis of what they're finding by just scraping Reddit, Google reviews, our reviews, everything, and kind of say, oh, here's what you need to know.
Yeah,
So you
good
need to
point.
be in a bunch of spots essentially.
Yeah. All right, somebody asked about customer satisfaction. So our industry sort of accepts this drop in customer satisfaction after move-in. Like, should we? What's reasonable?
No, we shouldn't. No, reasonable. Again, I've seen best in class clients that from move in to year end will drop 2 to 3 points. And to me,
It's barely a drop.
that's barely a drop, and that's reasonable. Same, I hate comparing us to the auto industry, but it's another big purchase industry, that people make. And the new car smell goes away, and the way I take care of my car, new car, when I drive it off the lot versus after it's been driven for a year and it's got 20,000 kilometers on, my satisfaction will taper. There's very few people I talk to that said, "Oh, I'm way happier with my car a year later."
Yeah.
it becomes almost commoditized a little bit. But 2 to 3 points of drop is kind of like that new car smell going away. 16 points of drop is customer abandonment. Like that's that
Yeah.
sort of abandonment syndrome I think has happened there.
Yeah. So in other words, we should not accept
We
that.
should not accept. No,
Let's do
no, we
better.
we can do better.
Yeah. So this one's getting a little into detail here, but I'll throw it to you anyway. How do you recommend handling post-construction issues that are actually a result from the homeowner's own actions that the builder did not advise to do, in a way that still protects the builder's reputation so that they don't feel like they're sounding defensive or blaming the client?
I think a lot of it, again, not to defer to upstream, but a lot of this has to happen upstream though. Like we've got clients that do like homeowner education sessions early on, like after a firm sale. So after they signed a renovation contract or after they signed up to buy a new home, they'll do a little bit of an orientation session right then already, and then kind of reiterate that message along the journey. So by the time the homeowner gets in the home, you have something to reference back to. Because then you can say like, hey, remember we talked about that you can't go into your electrical panel and do that work yourself.
Yeah.
It voids your warranty with what we did. And but if you don't have that, if you haven't set the stage early, again, like you mentioned, Natasha, that almost feels like an excuse.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
you need to sort of set it and document the journey along the way, and then you can have some reference and providing them. There's so many cool tools out there for helping them maintain and manage a new home and a new renovation after they take possession.
Yeah.
So giving them the tools to equip them to manage the stuff helps too.
Okay. All right, here's one. What's the most common mistakes you see the average builder making in their warranty process?
Going dark. The average builder, again, it's I mentioned before, they're treating it like it's a defect department. And it's their mindset even inside their team is we're a repair shop. We're kind of giving them do it for as little as we, that 0.57% that we accrued. And get in, try not to spend that whole amount on this customer
Yeah.
versus, what would you spend on that customer if you looked at them as a marketing opportunity?
Yeah.
So just communication drops off, mindset shifts.
So would that be like the quickest thing you can do to reverse that process?
100%. Yeah. Just
Yeah.
engage. Just stay engaged along the way. Reach out, check in. It costs so little along the way. And
Yeah.
we're scared of it as an industry a lot of times. We don't want to like reach out and then all of a sudden they give us more for the punch list.
Yeah. We do have a question in here, and I swear this is not a plant. Can you recommend a platform to do customer surveys for construction and post-construction clients?
No idea. No.
So happy we have Tim here. This is what Tim does,
That's
by the way. He's very good
that's
at
right.
not overselling, but yep.
That's right. I'd just like to be a thought leader, not a salesperson. But no, for sure. That's what Avid does. We have a great platform for home builders and renovators and again, trades and suppliers. So that's our sweet spot for the industry.
All right. Well, thank you to everybody who did stick with us for this long. And thank you again to Tim. We had a lot of great questions at the end there and always great information for you. For those of you actually who are coming to CHBA's Home Building Week in Canada, happening in Quebec City at the beginning of May, Tim is going to be speaking on a different topic at that event as well. So you do have a chance to see him again if you're planning on coming to that event. And if you're not, well, maybe today will convince you to come.
Totally. Yeah. Be there. Be there. It's fun.
Yeah. All right. With that, thank you so much, everybody. Remember the recording and the slides will be available at chba.ca/webinars for members. You should be able to access that by about tomorrow. We'll get it up there for you.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Natasha and team as well. It's been amazing. It's
All
been fun.
right. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.